good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May edition of the Translation Manchester Seminar Series. My name is Fiona, and I'm one of the translational research managers, along with Alessandro and Li Jing and Ikra, who is in our team as well. And thank you very much to Ikra for helping with the organisation of today's seminar. So the seminars have been designed to feature partners of the Translation Manchester Research Network. The network has over 60 partners representing teams within the various institutes and partner organisations to the university. And all of these partners can offer support for moving research along the translational research pipeline, so from the lab into a healthcare outcome. Information on each of our partners can be found in the booklet, which we have prepared, and Ikra has nicely posted the link in the chat for us. Thank you. And so each month, 2 partners come to present at our seminar series to tell you about how they can support translational research. All of these seminars can be found on our YouTube channel, and the link will also appear magically in the chat, and can be watched on demand. And today, our 2 partner speakers are Mohammed from the Clinical Trial Sponsorship Unit and Joanne Summers from the Knowledge Exchange Partnerships team. But just before we start, I'm just going to give a bit of Zoom etiquette, which I'm sure everyone is aware of by now. But could you please keep yourselves on mute and your cameras off as the event is being recorded. Please use the chat function to ask any questions or raise your hand after each speaker. And could you please stay on at the end of both talks, as we have a short survey that we would like you to complete. And thank you very much for your attention. And any further ado, I will hand over to Mohammed, who's going to talk to us about clinical trial sponsorship today. Thank you. Over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invite. So, quick background. So my name is Mohammed Zubair. I work for the University of Manchester and the University of Manchester as sponsor of drug trials, device trials, and anything that the university may consider to be high risk. So what we do here at the University of Manchester, we have a number of clinical academics who are always interested in getting their studies funded and running clinical trials. And the type of, so there's always a justification of why you want to run a trial. And primarily with early phase trials, and this is what Translation at Manchester is probably focused on, is usually around safety and efficacy. Those are the 2 key outcomes of trials. The more earlier phase of trials, the more safety orientated it is with a bit of efficacy, and the later phase trials are more pushed towards efficacy as opposed to safety. And fundamentally, when we're approached, we're always interested in what is the justification for the trial that our clinical academics want to undertake. And sometimes it's not always clinical academics. It could just be somebody who's lab-based, who's been working on a particular, say, device, product, drug, and they're keen to get it into humans. So we start then engaging with them because sponsorship is a legal responsibility to get your trials up and running, and trialing your products in humans is a heavily regulated area, as you would expect. And there are a number of standards, laws, and other kind of practices that we need to be familiar with and make the CIs and the research teams familiar with. And these are responsibilities that we as the university have to fulfill. And sponsorship is a legal responsibility, not just in this country, in the EU as well. And really what the organization takes responsibility for is the financing of the trial, so ensuring there's enough money to see the trial from start through to completion, which is usually archiving, ensuring that we've got the appropriate indemnity in place that covers not just our research staff, but also the protocol design and any impact it may have on participants who take part in the trial, where it's not the misconduct of an individual or if some negligence of a clinician. It's actually if something does go wrong because it was the root cause was the way the trial had been designed. That's where our clinical trials insurance applies. And in some cases, certain studies, there are going to be exclusions. So we would help researchers identify appropriate insurance. And also the management of the trial is the responsibility of the sponsor. So we actually take on that burden as an organization, and that's why we remain tethered to trials from start to finish. So if you are working on drugs, devices, and that could be you're repurposing a drug, or it could be an advanced therapy, it could be any kind of medical device, physical software, and so on. I mean, everybody's going to be familiar with the pipeline and what it takes, as it were, to get it into human and human trials and so on. But something to always bear in mind is not just that point. You've got a product, and it's now going to be trialed in human volunteers, whether healthy or whether it's a particular patient and cohort. You need to actually be aware of what are the licensing pathways out there that would allow your drug to be placed on and be placed onto the market, be either commercially available or be offered by healthcare providers in a given country. And it's at the moment there are a number of schemes, just to let you know, that are available where you can actually fast track your drugs or your devices as well. So it's just worth knowing that. So when we talk about sponsorship, we always like to know what the regulatory strategy is going to be for the research team. Now, this is just to give you an indication of the complexities in just setting up a basic trial. And everything in red there is a legal requirement. And as I said, the sponsor is ultimately responsible for the trial. So when the research team is undertaking that research activity, whilst the sponsor provides you that legal cover, it's important that the processes that need to be followed are followed appropriately, and that can be verified as well through an audit. So whether that's an audit by the sponsor or any third party or a regulator, we have to be able to demonstrate a lot of this activity. And it is heavy going, it can be bureaucratic. But the fundamental point of clinical trials is you have to be able to verify through documentation that something that you're saying has been done, including how you follow the protocol, can be evidenced through documentation. So this is just to give you an indication of the kind of pathway that can be followed, and this is available online. And this is just to say, yeah, once you've got a firm trial design, you've got a firm protocol, stable protocol, what it takes to basically set the trial up. So to understand then why this is complex is because medicines themselves can be complex. They can be varied as well. And there are legal definitions that we abide by when it comes to medicines. And this is the UK's definition for what a medicine can be. And as we're seeing now with a lot of science and a lot of sort of cutting edge research, including gene modification therapies, you're looking at CRISPR technology, which is now being trialed by different sponsors. We're always sort of pushing at this definition, but it's important to understand actually what your product is. So even if you're developing at a very early stage and the hope is to translate it at some point, you've got to be clear in your mind whether it really does meet the definition of a medicine or whether it meets the definition of a medical device, which also is varied. And especially now with software, a lot of software being used, that does it meet that definition? And if it doesn't, is it potentially a borderline product? So even at the preclinical stage where you're trialing, let's say your particular device drug in animal models or other assays, it's important to know which pathway you're likely to follow and what it is that you actually are trialing and testing. So it can be complex if you're not clear about what it is that you're hoping your product will do and what it will achieve. So it's important to have that understanding. And again, a chat with the sponsor team, we could sort of guide you through some of the standards, the regulatory requirements, and work with you to help you understand what your product is and which regulations will apply. So we have plenty of experience now within the University Manchester sponsor team of sponsoring drug trials. So these could be late phase trials where we're using drugs that already have a marketing authorization, but our researchers feel, based on data that they've generated or what they've seen elsewhere, that if a product could be used off-label for a particular disease specification and they intend to trial it. So we have lots of experience in that, and those are kind of the traditional trials we tend to see in academia. We're now seeing a lot more experimental medicine applications going into funders. So biologics is a good example of that, and we're beginning to see advanced therapies as well. So the university does sponsor a number of early phase or first in human gene therapy trials. So we are developing that experience and expertise here in Manchester as well. Likewise, with medical device trials, you have actually, the University of Manchester can have two responsibilities when it comes to running what's called a clinical investigation of a medical device, which is similar to running a drug trial. And one is where the university is just a sponsor. Our researcher just wants to trial a device and generate data, but that data may potentially be used to CE mark or UKCA mark a device and then commercialize it. Or it could be a device that we actually, our academics have manufactured. And that doesn't necessarily mean physically putting it together, but it's the know-how that they've come up with, where the IP sits with the organization. So when you're running a clinical investigation, it's worth understanding, are you running it as the sponsor, or are you asking the university to be involved as the manufacturer? And in some cases, it could be both. So having that understanding is really, really critical as well, because the regulatory requirements, the legal requirements, and associated responsibilities can be different, they can be divergent. And it's important to know why you're running that study. So just to give you an example of the types of devices that we are currently sponsoring, where the university has or is a manufacturer, we see a lot of software applications which meet the definition of a medical device being used in various trials, diagnostic assays. And we've also run a first in human surgical trial using a nerve conduit developed from using a novel polymer. So we see different. So usually devices are in three categories: class 1, 2, and 3, or 2A, 2B, and then 3. Where class 3 devices are considered to be the most high risk. So we have experience of running clinical investigations with class 2, 2A, and AB, and class 3 devices as well. And usually a lot of this has been at that translational end, just to make that point known. We sponsor, as I said, high risk interventions as well, and that could include surgical interventions, using CE mark devices as they should be used, and so on. It could be a combination of drug and device, where we're not interested in the safety and efficacy of the drug or device, but actually the surgical intervention itself. So it doesn't neatly fit under the previous two categories, but it still requires significant oversight from the sponsor. And likewise, if you're interested in running a study that involves the use of drugs, so it could be your patients are on a particular treatment, but you're not investigating that drug itself, again, our sponsor team would be involved in that trial and in that setup. So in our team, then we've got our specialisms are then medical devices, CTIMS, ATIMS, and other types of trials. We work with a couple of pharmacists from Manchester NHS Trusts who work with the university under an SLA, and they're the IMP specialists. So they have a particular insight into, they could get you information as to how to manufacture that drug to GMP standard, how it should be stored, release, and accountability. So they have significant insight that they can offer you around that. Likewise, we work exceptionally closely with the contracts team here at the University of Manchester. Contracts don't just cover the funding of say a trial, whether it's commercial or non-commercial. It'll cover things such as technical agreements, and that cover the supply of a drug or a device. It could be agreements with third-party vendors where they're undertaking an activity on behalf of the sponsor. So that could be analysis of biosamples, where the outcomes of those samples are then informing your primary, secondary outcomes of a trial, which are really, really critical output. So we would get involved with that. We have experience of auditing these third-party vendors, commercial and non-commercial, as well as agreeing division of responsibilities with these organizations. So contracts is a really, really critical step, and we remain quite closely tied in with our contracts team. We equally work very closely with the research support managers at the funding stage. So where you're getting your application ready to put it into the funder, we'll work with them and make them aware of various costs that researchers should be aware of. And likewise, we work quite closely with the business engagement team, especially in commercial studies. For example, a company might be giving you free material. And likewise, as I said earlier, the insurance is a key component of sponsorship, because our insurance policy does have key exclusions that researchers need to be aware of, and that includes pregnant women and neonates. So if you're doing any research in that area, it's always useful to touch base with us, so we can then guide you as to what the appropriate insurance policy may be. Likewise, if you want to run your study abroad, then there are clear exclusions in our policy, so we would work with you to find appropriate local insurance. Now, whilst we've got a good handle and good idea of what the regulatory pathways are for these drugs and some of the issues that come up with, because a lot of translational research is doing something for the first time, it pushes at the boundaries of the regulations. What we don't know, and that could be many things, we are tied in with the UK sponsor network, which is made up of the Russell Group universities. So we can always reach out to other partners and see what their experience is in terms of surmounting, say, regulatory issues or obtaining appropriate approvals or contractual issues. And likewise, we also engage directly with the regulators in this country. So the HRA is responsible for ethics and ethical approval, and the MHRA is the Medicines Health Regulatory Authority. So they will give you approvals for drug and device trials as well. In terms of what I would like to see come out of this is we're keen to translate more research here in Manchester. I mean, compared with other Russell Group universities, they may be stronger in that area, but we're keen to now sort of help researchers get those their research translated earlier. The regulatory strategy is a really key component of any kind of product device that you're working on. So, and depending on which technology or material you're using, we would like to hear from you so we can understand how you intend to get that product to clinic. It could be easy to think about we're only going to work on products in a sort of segmented way, but actually without understanding the full regulatory pathway, there's a possibility that your trials may not generate the relevant data that you need, that those endpoints may not be appropriate and therefore may never be funded by a healthcare provider in any kind of jurisdiction. So it's important to understand of what value your research is likely to be. And I think having that early conversation can actually allow you to tailor your research strategy to make sure that you're actually considering the appropriate endpoints for your treatments. So is it just modification of a gene or some other kind of output, or are you looking at maybe improving quality of life, which actually does have an economic dimension associated with it? So things like that are quite important for you to consider. We would like to hear from researchers as early as possible, because if you're working on these new technologies and these new materials, and if we don't have much experience with it, it allows us and gives us time to then reach out to other organizations and the regulators and say, this is likely to be coming your way. What do we need to be aware of? and where are those pinch points that that we need to address in the applications that we make to the regulators, so that they can get through. And as I said, there are these early access schemes now within UK, EU, and the US. And what we're asking researchers to consider now is, are you able to bypass the traditional pipeline of getting your drug through an early phase to late phase trials and then getting your license by using some of these early access schemes, which are out there, which are live as well at the moment. So there may be sort of other ways of getting a product out there a lot quicker than the usual 10, 15, 20-year period, especially in light of what we've seen with COVID and COVID-related research very recently. So what we'd be more than happy for you to contact us directly on our medical devices email address, or the clinical trials email address, or if there's anything else that you're working on, you're not sure where it may fit in, just reach out to us directly. As I said, we have experience of sponsorship. We've done many, first in human studies here in Manchester, and whilst all of this is quite risky, the biggest risk we have is when somebody turns up with a pot of money and says, can you sponsor this study? And that's that can be a big difficulty, and it can clog up your research, because the delays will basically mean that you may not finish your study to time and target, and therefore you will not be able to answer your primary, secondary outcomes. And that's a big risk, because clinical trials are very rarely repeated, especially early phase trials. So with that, I'm going to end, and if there are any questions, I'll happily take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. That was a very comprehensive presentation on the support available from your team. So very, very interesting. If there is any question for Mohammed, please either raise your virtual hand, speak out, or put it in the chat. In the meantime, Fiona, do you want to say something? No? Okay. In the meantime, I've got a question for you, Mohammed. It might be very naive, so apologies if that's the case. But who decides if the University of Manchester is the sponsor, or the trust in which the clinical trial happens is the sponsor? Is there an answer to that question, or is it a naive question?
Yeah. So the rule of thumb is it should be your substantive employer, Sandro. So if your substantive employer is the university, then yeah, come to the university for discussion around sponsorship. Likewise, it may be that you might be working with, let's say you're not a clinical academic, all your research is lab-based, but you do need a clinician to run your trials. So chief investigators have to be clinicians and medics. So what we have experience of is sponsoring trials where the idea is belongs to the university, but we have, let's say, a clinician who then we give an honorary contract to, and we then run that trial as well. So I hope that answers your question. And there also something else for you to consider is, it may be that some trusts and some organizations, let's say, it doesn't have to be Manchester NHS Trust, may have exclusions around, let's say, running first in human trials or gene therapy trials or something of that nature. We have experience of basically sponsoring those types of trials as well, subject to a risk assessment.
Fantastic. That's a very clear answer. Thank you. We have a hand raised by Joe Bryan. Hi, Joe.
Thanks, Mohammed. I'm just going to lower my hand so I don't get a legacy hand there. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to be one of those awful people who says it's more of a comment than a question, so sorry about that. Just to say that, I'm the NIHR grants assistant at MFT. And of course, we also need to think about the MASC agreement in terms of where, hosting certainly lies in terms of the contractual and financial side of things. And sometimes that does contribute to conversations about who is the sponsor as well. So the chief investigator is a very good rule of thumb, but there are some kind of other considerations that need to be made. So, if in doubt, MFT would be very happy to also, have people contacting us as long as it's in good time. to, you know, make sure that we've got the right sponsor for the right study.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, we do have this MASK sort of memorandum of understanding. Don't confuse where your money should sit versus sponsorship sometimes. I mean, sometimes academics can do that. And yeah, we're always trying to, you know, we want the NHS to maximize its income as well. So we're not averse to that. We understand that. But sometimes we've seen that the funding may sit within an NHS trust, but the university will still be the sponsor. So yeah, I mean, but the key, I think, to take on from this is if you contact the organizations as early as possible, then we can guide you appropriately.
Well, thank you both for clarifying that. We have a question in the chat from Wendy Thompson. Wendy is asking if they want to undertake a trial of a behavior change intervention, so basically a worksheet to use with the patient during appointments. Is that classified as a medical device? So I don't know if Wendy, you're on the call and you want to expand on that as well.
Yeah, hi, sorry. I know that medical device has got a really broad definition, and I was just wondering what the definition was really, and whether anything that's used with patients during an appointment is seen as being a device.
Yeah, Wendy, I mean, it's just reading here, I mean, any diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, or alleviation of disease would meet the definition of a device.
So say it again,
So diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, or alleviation of disease would meet the definition of a medical device. I think what you're probably saying that doesn't meet that definition, but if you send what you have through, we can certainly look at it and come back to you on that.
Yeah, okay. We're not quite at the trial stage yet, but I was just, as I was on the call, I thought I'd ask the question. It's kind of planning well ahead yet. I will do.
One of the things that we're encouraging, I mean, our own academics to do is, if they are working, you know, very early on potentially, let's say it's a feasibility study involving a device, we're still saying contact the sponsor team. And what we'll do is we'll basically try to get a feel and understanding of what's happening, why it's being done, what the sort of short, medium, long-term strategy is. So then we can actually sort of guide researchers along the appropriate pathway.
Okay.
So it's never, yeah, premature or too early, you know, to contact us.
Thank you.
Good, fantastic. Any further question for Mohammed from the audience? I do have perhaps a very quick one, Mohammed, if that's actually two. One is about the support you provide with the technical dossier for MHRA. Is that a case that you work with the academics to put that together with your expertise? Do you bring in external regulatory experts? How does that work?
So so let's just talk about the manufacturing aspects. Whether it's a drug or device, you need to demonstrate you've got something stable that's been manufactured appropriately, and there are appropriate quality management systems behind that. So if we're outsourcing that, we would expect the manufacturing entity to help us develop, let's say, that particular part of the application. So they would be expected to complete that. We would work with the research team in terms of developing the protocol and also the application to the MHRA, which is, this is what we want to do, and the information that's going to be captured in the IRAS form. So we would basically, yeah, we would work on that with you. We don't have expertise in the specific science that's going to be trialed. We don't have that. But what we can say is break it down as in where you need to demonstrate preclinical data. What is it that the MHRA, for example, is looking for? Where you're demonstrating other information around toxicity, is it appropriate or not? We can give you the benefit of our experience, and which you may find useful. And likewise, the clinical aspects, we will give you some information on as well. And then also, for example, as I mentioned, we work with some clinical trials pharmacists as well. A lot of the information, for example, for drug trials is about where's that drug coming from, to, you know, where will it be stored, how will you ensure accountability, and so on. And that insight then can be offered by our colleagues from MFT. But there are times where something may be so specific and complex that actually is beyond us, and in which case we would probably advise very early on, maybe getting some subject matter experts to help contribute and finesse those applications to the regulator.
Good. Thank you. My next question was going to be around training, but we can discuss that separately, because there is another question from James in the chat asking what they should do if a patient becomes pregnant during the trial. Is the trial still insured, or should they be withdrawn?
So obviously, if it's a drug trial, one of the key questions that the MHRA will ask is, how will you ensure appropriate contraception is used? But it does happen in trials. We've not had any experience of it ourselves. It doesn't can the trial. I think the patient, depending on the type of product being used, must be followed up. But that discussion is then to be had with the regulator as to how will you follow that patient up, what safety signal are you looking for, and at what point can you say actually there was no detrimental impact, not just to the parent, but obviously to the child as well. So this could be male and female. So it comes down to what product or medicinal product, it could be even a device, has been used. So yeah, it's not as clear cut. As I said, it will always come down to risk and the risk of that particular product. I hope that answers your question, James.
Okay, I hope that was a good answer. Thank you, Mohammed. So I think in the interest of time, perhaps we can move to our second speaker, but thank you so much, Mohammed, to come and present this today. So this is a good training, I think, for people starting to think about that, and maybe we can do something more in the future to, to engage with those academics at the early stages that are thinking about doing things like this. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our second speaker of the day, Joanne Summers. Joanne is here from the Knowledge Exchange team and talking about the funding schemes that they've got available to help you to transfer your knowledge into real impact. Joanne, the floor is all yours.
Hi, everybody. So my name's Joanne Summers and I'm a KE manager, and I sit in the Knowledge Exchange partnerships team within the wider business engagement team. I'm here today to just explain some of the schemes that we manage within our team and how we can support academics to access that funding. So what is our role? Our role is predominantly to manage and deliver the UCRI Impact Acceleration accounts, and we manage the university's Innovate UK Knowledge Transfer Partnership portfolio. Both sets of funding enable us to create impactful collaborations between the university and external organisations that ultimately create mutual benefit. So what are the schemes we actually look after? So there is the Impact Acceleration account, and this is a harmonised account this year, and it's the first year that 5 research councils have actually collaborated together. That includes AHRC, BBSRC, EPSRC and MRC and STFC. So the purpose of the funding is to help accelerate research and innovation to develop wider impacts across industry. We can do that by enabling and supporting proof of concept, secondments, and supporting collaboration right through to commercialisation. The other funding is knowledge transfer partnerships. KTP is the term commonly used. It's the Europe's leading programme for academic and industrial collaboration. And here at Manchester, we've currently got 33 projects live with a value of around 10.7 million. There's actually 4 sat in biology, medicine and health. 8 are allocated in humanities, and science and engineering are leading the way with 21 projects. So what is a KTP? It's a 3-way partnership, and we start with a company that has a strategic need, an ambition and a growth strategy. But the company, the organisation, has a knowledge gap internally that is restricting them from achieving it. And what they do, they share that vision and that challenge with the university. And what we're able to do is identify academic colleagues that have knowledge or specialist expertise in that desired area of the company. And we form a partnership to help address that need. And academics support the business to make the application and commit to a 10% supervision time once the project is awarded. Upon award, we actually recruit a KTP associate whose role is to deliver and manage the project, co-supervised by the academic team and the company partner, and they're actually seconded into the business partner and deliver the vast majority of the project from their premises, although they can and do spend time on campus. Projects are co-funded and the funding split between the business and UKRI. So the key feature of a KTP is they can be anything from 12 months to 36 months in duration. A typical one in Manchester is 30. We recruit an associate. They're employed by the university and seconded into the business. Most of our associates here at Manchester are actually postdoc level, but we do have a couple that are a postgrad. The associate does spend the majority of the time at the company premises embedding the knowledge and outcomes of the project. Academic supervisors must commit to spend at least half a day a week supporting both the associate and the company to fulfill the project requirements. We also have to run and are committed to a local management committee that meet every 4 months, and they help provide the strategic direction for the project. So the criteria for a KTP is it has to be a strategic need within the business. It's got to be underpinned by a strong business case that will ultimately create wealth generation for the company. And Innovate UK are really looking there to see additional profit being generated either from a new product or service the KTP will deliver, or by new ways of working, which will assist in productivity gains and ultimately, increase profit margins. The project has to be stimulating and challenging for all 3 parties. So there also has to be a real academic challenge and need within the project. We're actually scored on 4 criteria. The project must be impactful, innovative, challenging, and cohesive. And what they mean by cohesive is that the work plan we present from the academic team clearly can deliver upon the challenge of the business and the overall aspirations in terms of impact. So the budgets are funded by Innovate UK, and large companies can receive up to 50% grant, and SMEs can have up to 67% grant. Internally, the income's classed as R-coded income as the grant is awarded to the university. The budget of a KTP follows a set framework that's dictated by Innovate UK. It covers the associate's employment cost. We also have an associate development budget, consumable budget, travel, and it buys out academic supervision time for 10%, and we're able to claim 50% indirect costs against the associate's salary. The challenge in the budget for KTP for academic colleagues within the in the faculty are the consumable budgets are quite small and are capped at £10,000. So, and the requests we make have to be justified. So any cost over and above the £10,000 cap needs to be met by the industrial partner. In addition to the KTP budget, as part of the application process, we also work with the partner to understand the additional costs that the project will require. And, you know, things like that include the cost of securing IP, ongoing marketing and distribution costs for, you know, to support commercialization, staff training and development and upskilling. One thing to flag is that the total cost of a KTP, including the company's costs, are eligible for R&D tax credits. So a significant proportion of what the company contribute to a KTP, they can reclaim against their R&D tax credits. So the business benefits that we see from KTP are typically increase in annual profit, investment in further R&D. Many KTP go on to undertake additional research and innovation projects with the university. Many do create new jobs and safeguard existing jobs within our organisations. The associates are very often employed by the partner organisation at the end of the KTP, and they develop really strong links with the university following the completion of a KTP. The associate also gains great benefit from a KTP. They get a competitive salary. They also are registered on a training programme that's funded through Innovate UK, which covers overall, you know, project management, management skills. They also are given a personal development budget of up to 2k a year, and many associates go on to get either high positions within the partner organisation or move on, you know, into great, fantastic jobs. So academic benefits, this is one of the areas within the application that we also focus on. So we want to see that academic colleagues will benefit from participating in these projects. And what we're finding is typically that will be research papers, conferences, you know, it does bring in valuable research income. KTPs create great impact case studies that can contribute to REF, and many, like I say, do go on to do further research and projects with the academic team. So who can apply? What are the suitable companies for a KTP? It can be any UK-based company, PLC or limited, of any size really, but as long as they've got enough resource and capability to embed the new knowledge within the business. So typically we would be looking for a business to have at least 3 full-time employed staff. Unfortunately, we can't work with the public sector through KTP, but we can work with not-for-profit and charities. It is a big commitment. It's a significant cash commitment for a company. So KTP shouldn't be seen as a quick fix. It's really to drive a long-term strategic ambition within the company. Companies can be virtual or, you know, have a fixed office space, and projects can also run using a hybrid model. So the summary of a KTP is really a project needs to be company driven and supported by an academic team. It's got to address a strategic need within that organisation. The academic team then apply their knowledge to help deliver new capabilities to address that challenge. Projects can be anything from 12 to 36 months, and the funding can be up to 67%. Like I said, any business, as long as that's not within the public sector, we recruit an associate who will lead and manage and work full time on the project based in the company premises. A KTP is jointly supervised by a company supervisor as well as an academic, and many associates go on to be employed within the business. And just to flag, nationally, the success rate for KTP is around approximately 80%. That can jump up and down slightly. But here at Manchester, we're currently running around 95% success rate on our KTPs. So moving on to impact acceleration accounts. So this is, you know, really exciting. It's the first time UCRI have delivered a harmonised IAA, which is, you know, one single application that covers the 5 research councils previously mentioned. The aim is to support existing research and help innovation ecosystems to develop so that we can fast track, you know, that research through by early stage interventions to, you know, embed activities within partners quickly. A key point of the IAA is we're really keen to receive multidisciplinary projects that can be funded jointly across more than one research council. So what are the types of mechanisms we can fund through the IAA? So we've recently released our first call, which was really exciting. So I've put a link there to the call. There's full guidance available. So we're currently able to fund research relationship development schemes, which will help foster new relationships between external partners and academic researchers that will create potential for further collaborations or knowledge exchange. Now that is actually an open call, and colleagues can make an application for that at any point in time. So there's a link within the document to the application form and a quick guide. We also offer proof of concept funding, and that's with a budget of up to 30,000, and that supports very early stage transformation of research outputs into a commercial or translational opportunity. So the deadline for proof of concept funding is the 13th of July, but we would encourage you to liaise with our team, with the KE team, you know, prior to making your application. And what we can do is help form that with you to provide you with some guidance. So I would suggest that you contact us maybe a month before submission, so we can help you with that. We're also able to support secondment scheme applications, and these are actually secondments both in and out of the university, with a budget of up to 60,000. The deadline for applications is the 13th of July, and these are to support flexible secondments, which can be full-time or part-time, between the University of Manchester and other businesses and organisations. And again, within the link on that page, you will be able to get the application form and a guide to making you know, the application. And again, we would encourage you to contact the KE Partnerships team if you've got a potential secondment that you'd like to explore. We can provide you with some advice around that. So like I said, eligible collaborators, both for proof of concept and secondments, are UK-based businesses, UK charities, and with the IAA, we can work with UK public sector, including the NHS, unlike KTP. So UK public sector is welcome to apply. Non-UK based businesses may be eligible as long as we can see from the application that there is an intention for inward investment during or after the lifetime of the project, you know, where we can see there will be some benefit to the UK, either by job creation, etc. So, as I said, the KE team do provide a fully supportive application process. We're keen to help, and we want to hear from you very early if you've got ideas and potential projects to access either both KTP or the IAA funding. So what I would encourage you please to do is just to make contact with us as early as possible, and we're very happy to help. So that's my email address should you want to contact me. And what I would encourage you to also do is our web pages have been recently refreshed. So you will find on there is further guidance on the funding mechanisms and submission dates for IAA and KTP. And there's also links to case studies, videos, and other colleagues within our team. So I'll leave it there. Thanks. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to help and answer them.
Thank you, Joanne. Great presentation. A lot of opportunities, funding opportunities for all of our researchers. We're running out of time, so unless there is some quick question, we can probably move on. Actually, perhaps I can ask you a very quick one. You know, in terms of KTPs, but also these new opportunities from the IAA, do you also help academic finding those businesses, or do you expect the academic to come with a business in mind?
It's always better for an academic to come with a potential partner. We do have links with, you know, SciTech Bruntwood and Alderley Park, etc., etc. So we can, if we, you know, we can try and identify partners, but that isn't something we would typically do. But we do have, you know, access into them types of organisations where we can highlight opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joanne. Apologize, we are running a little bit out of time, so I will not launch the poll. If you have any question for any of our speakers, you can get in touch with them directly. Before we leave, though, I just want to tell you about an event that we've got next month, which is with the catapults, so the medicine discovery catapult and cell and gene therapy catapults, who are going to come on the 16th of June to present the support they can provide to you. And that will tag along quite nicely with the funding opportunity we've got open at the moment, which is access to expertise. So you'll be able to book in a one-to-one with the catapult and discuss the way they can support you, and then apply for funding from Translation Manchester to support that activity. So all the links to these are being posted in the chat as we speak. But I would like to thank again the fantastic speakers to come and present today. The videos will be posted on our YouTube channel, so we will distribute those in our newsletter later this week or next week. I can't remember when it actually goes up. And thank you all so much for attending today, and I'll see you next month.